We are continuing our what I can only dub a legislative pregame show. I mean, every day there's at least 2 to 3 segments taking a look at what's going to go down at the state capitol starting next week. Joining us now is State Representative Scott McKnight. Scott, welcome back. How are you, man?
I am doing great, Brian. How are you?
Doing very well. Somebody was saying yesterday, I'm trying to remember who, somebody was saying yesterday at the NFIB event that everyone's ready for nothing to happen in this session. Well, because it's an election year, and there's going to be a lot of talk and not a whole lot of action. I don't know that I see it playing out that way. I don't know that if I agree with that. Would you?
Yeah, I think I disagree with that.
Okay.
And I've had people say that to me as well, and I've kind of pushed back on them, saying, guys, I think that we're seeing a lot of bills filed that are covering a vast array of topics and are pretty strong bills, one way or the other.
Mm-hmm.
And I think people are, the sentiment is it's time to actually start making changes, and I think that we've done that this past few sessions. We've made some moves, and I think that it's going to continue to move topics along. But I think with the governor's race, it's very clear people are ready to see some real change happen and to really start solving these problems that people always talk about solving.
Well, it's such a chance to wipe the slate clean and start fresh. You're going to have a new governor. No matter who wins, you're having a new governor. And that opportunity hasn't been there for 8 years. So, and look, the world is different now than it was 8 years ago on so many levels.
Absolutely. No, look, I think it being the last session under this governor, of course, unless some special session were to pop up, but I think what you're going to see is a lot more things move through the Capitol that may have normally gotten stuck in a committee because various reasons. You've got people inside of both chambers that are running for governor that want to show that what they're proposing as solutions or their real proposals.
Yeah,
that they're actually trying to move those bills. I think it's going to be incumbent just to see if the governor is willing to use his veto power to stop some of those changes and rely on whoever the next governor is to move them along.
Just speaking generally, and not getting down into any particular bill, but a general sentiment. If the governor were to veto anything coming, and I'm sure he will veto, but if the governor were to veto anything significant coming out of this session, there would have to be a total will to say we're overriding. I don't see a scenario in which the legislature, who's already stood up to the governor, had a veto override session, has overridden vetoes before through a veto override session.
Yep.
He's on his way out.
Yeah.
He can't do anything else. So
look,
put the stamp on it.
The governor in Louisiana is, it's widely discussed. The governor in Louisiana has an extreme amount of power, even more so than a lot of other governors in the country. And that veto pen has been used, to the governor's advantage for many, many years.
Yeah.
But I do agree with you. I think that we're at a point in this particular governor's term, being the last session, that there will be more will to push back on him. Because the repercussions are short-lived at this point.
State Representative Scott McKnight is our guest. We're taking a look at the session, which begins this coming Monday. Scott, you talk about bills that might have not made it across the finish line in the past that are going to get another go of it. HB 12 by State Representative Richard Nelson would prevent kids from moving on to fourth grade if they can't read in third. I bring this one up first because I feel it ties directly into something that you helped pass last year with the Steve Carter literacy bill. This bill having another go of it this time around, this one has to have the support this time, right?
I would think so. It made it out of the House. It died over in the Senate. I think that the support is going to be there this time, and I think that it was also one of those I think the perspective was that the governor would have vetoed it as well had it gotten there. Don't know that for sure, but I think that was the opinion of. But I think that this time it's going to make it all the way through, and whether the governor signs it or not, we'll just have to see. But I do think that the political will is to get this done. The talking points on it prove that it has worked in other states. It is one of the biggest issues that in Louisiana is our educational system, where our outcomes are. And, to your point, my Steve Carter literacy program was built to help with this exact problem. and this will only push the school systems to resolve it before sending kids on to the fourth grade. We've said many times here and in committee that you know from kindergarten to third grade you learn to read. Past third grade you read to learn, and if you haven't accomplished that learning to read part, it makes your life so much more complicated. It obviously lowers the chances that you're going to get out of lower school to high school, and the chances that you end up in some type of trouble along the way increase.
The bill itself requires each student take a literacy screener. That's the literacy screener is already in present law during the spring semester, and it provides that if results demonstrate a reading deficiency, the student shall be provided certain intensive instructional services, and that comes before being held back. It's a pretty straightforward law. I mean, there's a lot of other text to go along with it, but it feels pretty straightforward. Hindsight being 2020, it might actually be better that it didn't pass last year because your Steve Carter literacy program has a chance to get a foothold before you see a punishment end from holding a kid back.
Yeah, I think, look, it gave the opportunity for that program to get moving, thanks to, Cade Brumley and the Department of Education for pushing that along. But somebody asked me the other day, they asked, hey, what do you think about this? Because this could maybe make your bill irrelevant, in the years to come. And I said, well, you know what? If that is what happens,
Mm-hmm.
that's a good thing for the state. Steve, who the bill was named after, Steve Carter, was a huge proponent of education, and I think he would be extremely ecstatic if this program was no longer needed because our schools were being successful with what they were supposed to do to start with.
Yeah, that would be the ideal. Absolutely.
So I would hope we wouldn't need this program in the future because we're successful.
Right. Better to have it and not need it than need it and not have it.
Absolutely.
Talk with State Representative Scott McKnight about the upcoming session. I got to ask you about one I talked about last hour. State Senator Patrick McMath, who is from Covington, which is heaven on earth, by the way.
It's no District 68, but
whoa. District, you got a solid district. No disrespect to 68. Patrick McMath has a bill that would create the Secure Online Child Interaction and Age Limitation Act. I don't even know if you've had a chance to fully read this one yet. It sounds like a great idea that has a ton of landmines that would have to sidestep. Is that accurate?
Yeah, look, I hadn't had a chance to read through it. I did hear y'all talk about it. And first, let me say that Senator McMath is a wonderful person, and he has great intentions. And I think that I've worked with him on a lot of different issues, and he does a really great job. I do, without reading it on the surface, I do see some landmines coming. We speak constantly on how we are the parents, and we're supposed to be able to take care and decide what's good for our children, what's not good for our children. And there's a lot of technologies out there that help you regulate your children's intake of social media or any other aspects of a digital platform. So I think that there are ways to do what on the surface it sounds like he's trying to do with the technologies that any parent can choose to implement if they choose to do so.
Yes, and one of the things about this with the I forget the exact number, but the social media platform would have to have 5 million or more users.
Yeah.
Which to me, and you and I are both dads.
Yeah,
this puts you in a position of constantly playing chase. I mean, kids are going to know what's next before we do.
Yeah.
I mean, we're still on Facebook, Scott. They're like way over on Snapchat or beyond at this point. So
sure.
And there's a few other landmines that might step in. I just wanted to throw it out there because it's going to garner a lot of attention.
Look, I don't disagree with the premise of what the end result is, because I do agree that, look, this is a huge topic. Kids are getting content way earlier in life than when we had access to it. There's communication with unknown people that is just a 24/7 access potentially to harmful people.
Yeah.
And so I do agree with what the end game is of what you're trying to prevent. There are some landmines along the way of what this is, and I'll be interested. I'm going to be keeping obviously a very close eye on it, on how it develops through the committee process and through the legislative process. Because as we know, most of these bills that get introduced, no matter how they start, they can end very, very differently by the end of the game of where, getting across the finish line. So the problems will be addressed in the process, and we'll just kind of have to see if they are addressed to the point that people are satisfied with them.
Yeah. Yes. and there's room for that negotiation as well. It's former U.S. Attorney Brandon Freeman. He does a talk on the dangers of social media, and within that talk, he says the most dangerous social media platform is whichever one your kids are on.
That's right.
So if the bill is framed around 5 million users, it would have to change.
Well, look, Brian, you and I have known each other for a little while, and I'm not sure that you know this part about me or not, but you know that I was a reserve deputy for the sheriff's office for 10 years.
Did know that.
But I was inside that. I was able to work on a task force with the state police, and I did a lot of work inside of human trafficking and the ICAC program, the Internet Crimes Against Children program with the state police, the FBI. And
I did not know that.
And so I've had the ability to go on these social media platforms, sit in a room with some other agents and pretend to be an underage child in order to see the interactions. And then those the full-time people were taking those cases and continuing the conversations to the point where you develop an entire case, and then you go arrest those people. So
Yeah.
I've got a lot of experience inside of it and knowing kind of where those avenues are. And Brandon's right, 100% right. It's whatever app they're on, because it doesn't matter if it's a social media platform.
Mhm.
A lot of these the free games that are building, Candy Crush. I don't want to use not that one specifically, but
right.
any of these games that on the surface seem innocent, there tends to be an internal chat platform, so that the people on the game can communicate at some level.
Right.
Those getting down to as simple as that is extremely dangerous, because that is where people are trying to contact children.
And that's not necessarily to say that it's the intent of the creator to make it that way. The intent of the creator, and we do Cup of Tech Gumbo every Friday, host of Tech Gumbo, Haggai Davis says that if you're not the customer, you're the product.
100% right.
So when it's a free game, you are the product.
Yep.
So that chat that's back and forth between somebody else, that's garnering information to sell back to you and to those who are like you. So, yeah.
Yeah, look, again, it is not the original intent of these games. It's just how bad people manipulate good things or things in our society to their advantage to get what they want. I mean, that's what we see constantly. Vehicles are not bad things inherently, but they're used in instances to run into people. They are,
yeah.
There's things,
that's a good analogy.
Knives are intent to use to help cut your food and do
that fantastic pork chop at Jubin's yesterday.
Exactly, but you can turn it into a bad thing, right? And so anything in life can be turned from its original use into a negative or a bad action.
Got 3 minutes left with State Representative Scott McKnight. 3 minutes left in this segment. Scott knows that I'll be all over his phone all through the session, so he'll be back regularly. What are you eyeing up for the first week?
Well, first week is usually pretty slow. Obviously, it's mostly procedural.
I hate y'all so much. It is. I was sitting there watching like the
reading of the journal
the doling out of the bills to the committees.
Yeah, it's the first week really is a procedural week for the most part. There's steps that we have to take in the process.
Yeah,
and those steps are there for good reasons, in that it makes sure that the public is notified to what's happening with bills that they want to see where they go. So they're directed to the committee first week, and then they have to lie over, and then there's the first reading, the lying over, then the direction, and so there's the process so that the community and citizens have the ability to react, to read the bills, to make sure they can schedule to be in front of the committee if they want to come speak about a bill or hear what's happening with it. They have the opportunity to get to the Capitol. So
sure.
it is very slow at first, but it's for good reasons, because we want citizens' feedback. We want that involvement, because at the end of the day, every bill and everything we do is about the citizens. It's about the good of the state and what we're trying to do to make sure that it functions in a proper way, that in a place that we all want to live.
Okay, let me re-ask the question then. Once the actual discussion gets started, what do you have your eye on the most?
Yeah, so look, it's going to be, as we know, we're able to file 5 non-fiscal bills. So, those are generally pretty targeted in the hottest topics of the year. I think you're going to see a lot of crime bills, a lot of insurance bills, and a lot of other things that have been hot topics that maybe in the past that hadn't passed. Education, workforce development. So I think you're going to see a lot of that. But then the obvious answer is that being a fiscal session, there is going to be a lot about talk about taxes, tax structure, and what the future looks like for our total tax environment.
He is State Representative Scott McKnight. Like we said, first of many conversations as the session wears on. It'll get started on Monday. Officially get started on Monday, though the real action won't start for a few more days after that. Scott, we always appreciate the time, man.
Thanks, Brian.
We will
Appreciate it.
talk to you soon. We got ABC News.